Congratulations, legacy leader. You clicked on this episode to learn how to ask for a raise. I know it's uncomfortable. I've been there. My clients have been there. But I don't want you to think about like, oh my gosh, it's not that I'm greedy, I want more money. No, it's actually about advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself, reminding your employer and boss the value that you provide to the company. That's what it's about. And if you don't get what you want, then you could be like, hey, peace out. I mean, until you find a new job, but at least you know where you're at instead of waiting for a year or 2 years. So in this episode, you're going to get the 7 steps on how to ask for a raise, what happens if you don't get the raise, and why even if you do get the raise, you might realize, I do not want to work in this job or this industry. And does this actually work? Yes. It's helped my clients get a raise 25K beyond what they're making, and another client who landed a 300K job. So this is possible for you. And before we begin, if you could do me a favor and just hit that follow and subscribe button in your app, whether you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, that will mean so much to me, because what happens when you hit that follow button, that subscribe button, it lets the app know that, hey, this podcast is important. And it allows other fellow women of color and allies to listen to this podcast. So hit that follow button. That would mean so much to me. And let's drop the beat.
Hey, I'm Elaine Lucartas. I'm a business and career coach for women of color and allies. LA Weekly awarded me the #1 thought leader, and Apple News named me one of the top 5 business coaches. Done doing the most as a woman of color or ally, and you want to create your own definition of success and happiness? Well, grab your coffee, tea, or boba, and let's do some business and career real talk.
Asking for a raise is like dating. It's like the DTR of a work relationship. And for those of you that don't know what DTR means, it means define the relationship. You know, when you're dating someone, you're like, where are we? Are we just having some fun? Are we serious? Are we going to get to the next level? That's kind of like what a raise is asking your boss, asking your employer, hey, do you realize the value I am providing? And what are you doing to make sure that this is a long-term relationship? That's what asking a raise is. And I somewhat talked about how to ask a raise in episode 79 on how to create psychological safety with the Starbucks VP, Global Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer, Chayla Gage. And I figured, you know what? Why don't I let my listeners know the 7 steps on how to ask for a raise? And yes, I am sharing with you exactly how to do it, exactly what I teach my own paying clients. So you are going to want a pen and paper. You probably want to replay this again. And I just want to make sure I give back and give it to you straight. So we're going to go through the 7 steps. We're going to talk about what happens if you don't get a raise. And the third thing is why getting a raise might actually make you realize you don't want to be in your job or industry anymore. That's actually what happened with me. So the 7 steps. Number 1, find and print out your original job description. Number 2, create your own brag sheet or memo. You should have this ongoing throughout your job. And I want you to personally update this. This could be a Google Doc. This could be a Microsoft Word doc of everything that you have accomplished and things you're doing beyond your job description. And it would be nice if you could add some numbers. So maybe you do sales, whether directly or indirectly, how you've been able to help increase sales. Maybe you do systems and project management, how you've been able to decrease time and improve efficiencies. Or maybe you manage a team. So include everything that you have been able to accomplish since you started this job position. Number 3, research other similar jobs with what you do. So for example, go to Glassdoor, go to other websites like salary.com and look at similar job titles and look at the job descriptions that they do. compare it to what you have from step one, and see, oh my gosh, this is what happens with a lot of my clients. I'm getting underpaid compared to what other people are doing. Or this might happen. You might see that you are doing things beyond your job description. And when you do that, then the fourth step, I actually want you to research the other jobs you might be doing within your job. I hear so often from my clients, I'm doing 2 or 3 people's jobs. Well, I want you to print out those other jobs that you are doing. And then going back to number 2 with a brag sheet or that memo, show that, hey, this was my job description. I've been doing other jobs on top of my job description. So you have that evidence and it's pen and paper and written down. So I basically want you to pretend this is a project, a memo, and you're compiling all the evidence. You have your brag sheet, your memo. So that's one piece. You've printed out a comparison of the other jobs in the market within your area. So you print that out. You also print the other jobs you're doing on top of your current job and get that ready. And then the fifth tip is meet with your supervisor. And if you don't have a regular meeting with your direct supervisor, then schedule one. And then the sixth tip is use this script. It's actually using a framework called the thank you sandwich, where you start off as a compliment and then you provide your feedback. So thank you so much for the past X years, while at the same time, I would like to ask for a $12,000 raise because I've been increasing my roles and responsibilities, exceeding my goals, and I'm doing more than my job. I'm actually doing 2 jobs. I've compiled my research and I want to share this with you. And then number 7, here's a hard part. Pause and wait for a response. I know it's hard. It's like, oh my gosh, I just asked this person, or I just shared this person everything I'm doing. It's kind of like dating. Like I'm asking this person to be my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my partner, or I'm asking for marriage. And then you have to pause and wait. So I know it's awkward. Just pause and wait for a response. I also want to share, be mindful of the fact that your direct supervisor may not have any influence over the budget, and there might be a system and process. But the point here is that you're starting to have this conversation with the individual and you get to understand the process and the system of how to ask for a raise. So if they say yes, great. You can ask, okay, so what's the timeline? What are the steps needed for this to happen? When should I expect it? So that's when you ask. And then there are times when they can't. If they say, well, we can't do that, then directly ask this next question. Is there feedback on what I need to do to improve to get a raise? And then once again, be silent. And the reason why you want to ask if there's any feedback on what to improve, you just want to make sure that the reason why you can't get a raise is maybe there is a performance thing that you're not aware of, right? And let's say that they do give you feedback and they tell you, well, you haven't been performing A, B, C, D, right? And you could be direct with them and say, how come you are sharing this with me now? This was never addressed before. Now, let's say there were challenges and issues that you were working on and you have improved, right? Then you want to actually be prepared even before this conversation. I know that this past year, you have shared with me that I need to work with A, B, and C, and this is what I've done to improve. If there was nothing, like they gave you no warnings or feedback that there are things you needed to improve, and then they shared it with you during this conversation of asking for a raise, then you could ask, can you help me understand why you're sharing this with me now? I would have really appreciated if you shared it with me earlier, having that direct conversation. You're like, Elaine, oh my gosh, you are so direct. How do you do it? I've had to unlearn how I grew up where I wasn't direct. I didn't ask for questions and I was resentful all the time. And I hired my own coach. I read all the books, listened to, well, I didn't, podcasts weren't huge then, but watching YouTube videos of how to do this. So I just actually want to congratulate for you to even taking the step of listening to this podcast episode. So I am direct. I've been direct. I tell my clients to be direct. Can you help me understand why you never share this with me? I'm like, okay, if this is a challenge that I need to work on, then if I implement these steps, can I be considered for a raise in 6 months or a year? You just want to make sure that even if they are giving you feedback on areas of improvement, that you bring it back to the original, your objective, the conversation that you wanted to have for the raise. So that's what you do in that circumstance.
Legacy leader, I know what you're thinking. Elaine, you have such good stuff here. I want more. So if you want more tips and advice for your business, career, and life, sign up for my Gifts and Gifts newsletter at elainelu.com/join. That's JOIN. And here's 3 things you'll get when you join, because I'm like Santa Claus. I love giving. Number 1, funny gifts, because who doesn't love memes and pop culture references? This newsletter is so fetch. Number 2, receive actionable gifts. That's business, career, and life tips that you can start doing today. Third, the gift of me. Not only do you get my wins, but also my failures, my reflections. My Gifts and Gifts newsletter is like an up-to-date diary. Think Zanga or Life Journal for my fellow millennials, where I share vulnerable stories, relatable mistakes, and important life tips like what to watch on Netflix, like when's the next Bridgerton season. So if you're ready for those fun gifts and actionable gifts to create a more sustainable life, then join my newsletter at elainelu.com/join. That's JOIN. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Now, what happens if they just cannot to give you a raise because of outside circumstances like budget cuts or a budget freeze, right? So what you can ask as a follow-up, I understand that there are budget cuts or there's a budget freeze. When this is lifted, can I be considered for a raise? Once again, I'm being direct and asking, and then see what they do to respond. If you notice that like, oh, well, there's other things we need to do, A, B, and C. Well, if they simply can't because it's outside of your control, then this is when you consider looking for another job. Like, Elaine, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to go through that. Like, hey, at least you knew the power of asking for a raise, even if you do not get it, is you realize, well, if they're not going to do anything to try to keep me, despite all the value that I have shared with them, why am I going to stay here? At least you're not waiting. So the reason why I wanted to ask for a raise the time I did in my career when I was working full time is I just did so much beyond my job description. I asked my parents, hey, how do you ask for a raise? And they're like, just work hard. I'm like, no, that's not how it works in this country. And then I learned these steps on how to ask for a raise. And I was so surprised when I advocated for myself, used this exact 7-step process where I asked for it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I got addicted, like in a good way, addiction of like advocating for myself, asking direct questions. It's interesting because even my own family members, prior to being a coach in 2017, my family members and even friends would always come to me like, hey, I'm having this difficult conversation. How do I ask for this question from my boss or my colleague? So, you know what? If you can't get the raise because of outside circumstances or they're making shit up to you, then that's when you can consider leaving. And at least you know, at least you're not waiting for another year or 2 or 3. We have one life. At least you're not waiting and you could start looking. And just because you ask for a raise, here's what I want to share. I hear this so much from my clients. Just because you are asking for a raise does not mean, and you don't get it, does not mean that they will fire you. And if they do, go look for an employment lawyer. It's just at least you had this conversation. At least you could start taking steps. And also, this doesn't mean you have to quit your job, still do your job. I do not recommend like leaving we're humans. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalist society. We have bills to pay. So stay at your job until you find a new job. And if you need help finding a new job, highly suggest listening to episode 27 on changing careers and increasing your salary. And another episode is episode 63 with one of my clients on how to change careers successfully with Ava. So check episode 27, episode 63 on what you could do when you want to start changing or finding a job. All right. This may also happen, which happened to me, is So I did end up getting my raise that I asked for. And when I got my raise, I realized, oh shit, I got the money I wanted, but I hate my job. I hate this industry. I don't want to be in it anymore. And that sucked. That sucked in terms of I thought it was the money I wanted. No, I realized I got the money I wanted. I just didn't want to be here anymore. So that was really great for me. So I could start looking for the new job or the new industry. And I ended up doing informational interviews, which I talked about in episode 45 on how you can find a fulfilling job in life with Mac. And I was able to find my dream job working at the Pasadena City College Foundation as a fundraiser. And shout out to Bobby Abram, my former boss. I just had dinner with her a couple of weeks ago. I landed that job. And you're like, Elaine, but if you had your dream job, why do you have your business now? Well, it was my dream job. I had an incredible boss, mentor, an incredible team. I had my own office. And I just knew that I wanted to do something more. And I had my own business. So in this episode, you got the 7 steps on how to ask for a raise. And then things you can do, the scripts you can use of what happens if you can't get the raise. And another tip is be unattached to the result. The goal and intention, your objective is to advocate for yourself. And from this conversation, then you can make a decision of what to do in the next step for within this job or your career. It's the DTR. It's the define the relationship. So the take-home question I want you to get from this episode is, why is it important for you to ask for a raise? I want you to reflect on that. Maybe you're feeling resentful. Maybe you're just like, oh my gosh, I used to work out every day. I don't anymore. Or like literally, this was me before. I used to go on dates. I don't. I miss out on get-togethers. Like, why is asking for a raise really important for you? So journal about that. And if you want to take this a step further, because you're probably like, Elaine, is that it? I don't think that's it. I was like, no, literally, that's it. But I will say there's a lot of emotional coaching or just even the negative, the itty bitty shitty committee in your head that comes up when asking for a raise and what to do for next steps. So if you want to take it a next step, now I'm doing the define the relationship with you. I would love to coach you. And if you want to schedule a call with me to see if it's a good fit to work together, then schedule a legacy career review call with me at elainelou.com/call. That's ELAINELOU.com/call. And I'll give you some action items you can do. We could see if it's a good fit. If it's a great fit, great. We could talk about how it looks like to work together. And if it's not a great fit, great. I'll refer you to other people and resources. We're humans. We're not meant to work with everybody. So if you found this episode helpful, I recommend re-listening to it again or sharing this with a friend that might want to ask for a raise. So thank you, legacy leaders. I hope you learned the importance of advocating for yourself and reminding your employer and your boss the value that you provide. And if you found this episode on getting a raise helpful, here are 4 things you can do if you feel called to do them. Number 1, if you could leave a 5-star rating and review, that would mean a lot to me and my team. We created this podcast for accessible education for women of color and allies. And each episode takes about 4 hours to create. It takes me 1 hour to prep, another 30 minutes to 1 hour to record. Then my team spends another 2 hours to edit and market. Number 2, because I care about accessible education, share this with a friend. You know, the friend who's complaining about being underpaid or doing too much, doing 2 jobs and deserves a raise. What you are sharing with them is priceless and it's free. It just takes you 2 seconds to share it with them. Number 3, don't forget to hit that follow button or subscribe button. When you do that, it lets the podcast apps know how this podcast is valuable to women of color and allies like you. And it improves the reach. And number 4, if you would like support in successfully asking for a raise. Or maybe you realize you just do not like what you're doing right now. You want a more aligned job, career, or industry, one where you can have a life and you get to define your own version of success. Then let's see if it's a good fit to work together. I would love to invite you to schedule an introductory legacy career review call with me. Just know I only work with 24 clients at one time to ensure each client receives the results they deserve. So you can schedule a complimentary legacy career review call at elainelou.com/call. That's ELAINELOU.com/call.